Please feel free to say hello in the chat and let us know what state you're from. It would also be really helpful to know what you hope to get out of the Learning Symposium today, and we'll do our best to meet your needs. Next slide, please. I really want to just take 1 second to introduce our tremendous Arch team made up of consultants with incredible levels of experience. First is Susan Janko Summers, who most of you know because she's been involved in so many aspects of Arch's work around sustainability planning, our innovative and exemplary respite services, documenting lifespan respite best practices, and of course, where her area of expertise really lies is in respite research and evaluation, and she's always available to help you in those categories. We've also been really fortunate the last year and a half or so to have Cheryl Donnell with us. As all of you may remember, she facilitated our National Strategy Learning Collaborative and really taught us a lot about leadership skill development. And she continues to help out around follow-up on that work. I'm also delighted that Sarah Taves from Boise State University and the Idaho Caregiver Alliance joined us this year as well. And she's been working to help prepare a summary report of our Respite Research Summit that we held last fall. And she's also working with Arch on another project that we're engaged in collaboratively with US Aging to help implement the national strategy. So it's just been really wonderful to work with her as well. Kim Whitmore, who I don't believe is on the call today, heads up our respite research initiative. She also leads the Break Exchange, and Arch engages in partnership with the Break Exchange as well to host webinars, mostly on international respite programs and respite research. And I also want you to know Marcia O'Malley. She is our tech guru and our video editor, and she's here today to help us get through any Zoom complications that we might have when we have such a long engaged meeting. Tomorrow, I'm going to be providing an Arch update on our latest products and activities. So you'll hear more detail about the specific resources and training opportunities that are available for you. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder before we start today's meeting that, as most of you know, the in-person Lifespan Respite and Grantee Partner Learning Symposium is going to be held in conjunction with the National Lifespan Respite Conference in Huntsville, Alabama at the beginning of April. Our Lifespan Respite Grantee and Partner Learning Symposium will kick off with a wine and cheese reception on March 31st. From 6 to 8 p.m. And then the actual learning symposium will be on April 1st from 9 to 3 p.m. with breakfast and registration at 8 a.m. I hope to be able to send you a final agenda for this meeting in the next week or so. You may have registered and paid for the National Lifespan Respite Conference, but we do request that you register separately for this event so that we can have a head count of how many people will be attending. There's no extra charge for this event, but registration would be greatly appreciated. And you can register at this link, and there's a special code, and the code is Symposium 2025. If you have any questions about that, you can always shoot me an email if you're having difficulty registering for any reason. But please do that as soon as possible if you can, so that we can start planning for breakfast and lunch and any handouts we might have. Next slide. Just a brief overview of today's agenda. We'll kick off with our favorite part of the day, the Bring, Brag, and Borrow state presentations. When those are done, we'll take a short respite in which you can ask your colleagues questions, unmute yourselves, or put in the chat, and you'll be able to engage and ask what you need to ask. We do have a scheduled break at 2:45 Eastern, But please feel free to take a break whenever you need to. This is relatively informal. We know for many of you, we're cutting into your lunchtime as well. So if you need to leave and grab sandwich and come back to your desk, that's fine as well. And then in the afternoon, we're going to break into small group networking discussions on the topic of facing the future head on. I want you to know that we will not be recording these meetings so that you can feel a little bit more relaxed about asking questions or sharing information. And then we'll come back and report back and wrap up for the day. Next slide, please. We're really excited to launch day one of the Bring, Brag, and Borrow. For those of you who have done this before, you know that this is a rapid fire approach in which one person from each state in no more than 5 minutes presents a highlight of their lifespan respite grant or coalition activities from the past year. It's really meant to give you a chance to show off a significant accomplishment or even just provide an update of where you are with your program, because we have so many new people on the call. They're just going to be interested in whatever you have to say. And we encourage you all to follow up with your colleagues if you hear something that you might want to replicate in your own state or to share a similar experience. Even better, if you're attending the National Lifespan Respite Conference and you want to connect with the person who was speaking today that shared something incredibly interesting, you can hopefully set up a time to meet in person at the meeting itself. We would request that if you're sharing an activity that is outside of your funded Lifespan Respite Grant activities, that you describe a little bit about how the activity intersects with or enhances your Lifespan Respite projects. This year, of course, we also asked you to let us know which national strategy, goal, or outcome your highlighted activity is aligned with. And again, we continue to use this information to share with the Raise Family Caregiving Council as they monitor progress around national strategy implementation, but also as they begin to deliberate about how they want to update and revise the national strategy. This kind of information is very, very helpful to them. We're going to proceed according to the schedule that you see on the slide. I tried my best to group presentations by similar topics. The two major topics we're going to talk about today are public awareness and family caregiver engagement, and respite care provider training, various aspects of that. The BBB schedule that was sent to you in advance, it does have a column. I mean, you can also do this in the chat, but it has, if you want to print it out, it has a last column that leaves you room to take down notes or write down questions so you don't forget them. If you don't have the schedule, you can find the link to it at the bottom of the screen. And Marcia's going to put that link in the chat for you all. There's also a link to where all the PowerPoints, all the materials that people share, the agenda, the discussion questions for today, everything is posted on the Arch website at that second link. As I said earlier, when everyone's done presenting, we've allotted some time for you to ask questions. Marcia will be advancing the slides for you and we'll be sharing the screen from her side. So please remember to let her know when you would like her to advance to the next slide. Again, feel free to put anything in the chat at any time if you have a question or a comment, and we will definitely get to it or respond to it as soon as we can. And next slide, and we're ready to begin with our first presenter on the topic of public awareness and family caregiver engagement. Next slide. We have Celeste, and Celeste, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Is it Nava?
Nava, that's correct.
Okay, sorry about that. And Celeste is the Assistant Director at the Illinois Respite Coalition, and I hand it off to her.
Thank you so much, Jill. I appreciate it. Next slide whenever you're ready, Marcia. So with IRC, we wanted to just kind of give some updates about our respite task force. With our respite task force, we have been we've been meeting for a year and have a year more to go with all of our members. And our task force has been kind of structured in three different work groups. So we all meet together once a quarter as a whole big group, and then once a month, all of our subgroups meet to address different goals of the national strategy. So the very first one is our goal one group. Then we also have a group dedicated to goal three and goal five. So with our goal one group, what's been really exciting and what has kind of been, um, it's been a long time kind of coming with the collaboration with them, but with the goal one group, we were able to create a statewide respite informational flyer that can connect caregivers to state agencies depending on what their respite needs are and or their caregiver needs. So with that flyer, it really came together with folks from our Division of Developmental Disabilities, Aging, DCFS, the VA, our Illinois Family Caregiver Coalition, the Alzheimer's Association. So really just making sure that families have, the access, right, to go to these places depending on their needs and have everything just kind of together in a quick flyer where they can, scan it and do, things like that to make sure they can be connected to those resources. I won't go to the next slide yet, but the next slide will show kind of the flyer in a little bit more detail. I'll focus first a little bit on these other goals too. So with goal three, our group has been very recently redirected, and we are going to really focus on promoting and enhancing our training that we offer since we were part of that pilot project a couple years ago with Wisconsin and a few other states at that time. So we really want to make sure in goal three that we are going to be able to really further promote that training so that more individuals can know about it, take the course, and hopefully connect to more families who are needing respite support. And then we're also going to be reissuing our statewide caregiver survey. So that's something that we're really looking forward to getting done here, with the year left that we have to go. And then with goal five, the data related group, we recently had Dr. Whitmore from Wisconsin present to our group. And she was able to present to us about research best practices and how to collect information. And then from kind of like that discussion, because I think we've all kind of been like, well, what data do we want to collect? How can we make sure that we are going to be serving our caregivers, and like what do they need kind of thing. So part of that like research method is also one of our task force members. Her name is Christine. She has arranged for a student that in one of her programs to basically be an intern for us and help collect agency information, and kind of make sure that we are collecting really information pertinent to what we want to know about caregivers, and their experiences with needing respite, who already has services, who may, who hasn't been connected kind of thing. So that's something that'll be very ongoing, but we are really happy that we were able to have Kim present to us because it kind of let us understand like, okay, this is kind of the way that we should, maybe like go forth with collecting information. So it was nice, to kind of have her give us that foundational knowledge. Marcia, if you can go to the next slide. I'll come back to the goal one group. So I wanted to make sure I could share with the group the flyer that we created with the group. This is the statewide respite informational flyer that our goal one group created. As of January of this year, it has begun to be distributed amongst all state agencies in Illinois. So again, like DVD, Aging, DCFS, the ARC of Illinois has also done a really good job at getting this flyer out to their contacts. It's been on their website. They've sent it in their newsletters. I think it was even, we have a quarterly newsletter with IRC as well, so it was shared, I believe it was shared there too at some point. And we also made sure that the flyer has a QR code as well, to kind of give families that easier access, to scan that code, get access to the flyer. The flyer, once accessed, has links directly like on that PDF flyer so that they can be connected by website to the agency that they're looking at, communicating with. So if they needed to seek support from, like IDHS, they go to that, they click on the IDHS logo, it takes them to their website, and things like that. So we're really happy that this flyer has begun to be distributed. And then one of our members, even a couple of our members actually have helped translate the flyer as well into additional languages. So we do currently have a translation in Spanish and in Polish and in the works of Mandarin as well. And then we really also, once we hear more families, or, if we hear that other languages are requested, we'll seek those methods to get the flyer translated to additional languages. But we're really proud of this flyer. It took a lot of time and a lot of work from everyone in the group to come together and agree on this flyer. So yeah, we're really happy about that. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. And then I also just wanted to quickly provide an actual update from the our Lifespan Emergency Respite Care program. So that's actually like the funding program that we offer. And I just wanted to highlight that so far this program year, we have served 232 caregivers statewide with this emergency respite voucher stipend. And then outside of the families who have actually been funded, we have also been working with lots of other caregivers who are either in the process, they've received applications, they're using it at this time. We've connected with and will continue to connect with families, professionals, continue to kind of foster those referral services as well so that we can continue to help more families and really, get families the emergency respite voucher as well as connecting them to the additional respite services that they can qualify for. So we're really excited about how the emergency respite program has been working for us, how it's been growing for us. And I think, the efforts of the task force have definitely been, have definitely helped contribute to that success. And we hope to see it continue to positively grow for us. And that is Illinois Respite Coalition.
Thank you so much, Celeste. You have really accomplished quite a bit in the past year, so kudos to you all. Next up is Doris Green with the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition.
Turn on my audio, that would help. Hey everyone, nice to see some of your faces. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in Alabama. Slide. There we go. So the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition has been in existence for 15 years. And we have a program called the CWRC. It's a pilot project that we did. So this is very related to sustainability, which we will be talking more about in the 3-part series coming up. So just a quick plug for that. When there was an enhancement grant that was offered from ACL a few years back, and we took that on and decided to open this pilot project. And then when it came time to apply for the next round of Lifespan Respite, we were told that we couldn't apply because we had the enhancement grant. And so we were really trying to figure out what we should do to manage this. But with the enhancement grant, we opened the CWRC, which is the Caregiver Wellness and Respite Center. It's in 6 very rural counties in upstate New York. And the whole idea behind that program was to be able to have a satellite of the coalition to allow us to meet the needs of rural caregivers New York is a big state with lots of geographic area. So we engaged a partner up there who we thought was very well positioned and had the infrastructure to do this grant. But after a few years, it became very apparent that they weren't meeting the needs of the coalition. They were more meeting the needs of the other grant that they were under. So we took the grant back and we went on a search to hire somebody who could be up in that region. I'm far, far away from there. And the person that we found had a background in pharmaceutical representation. So she was very experienced in reaching out to the medical community. And so she started her journey in reaching out to every medical office in those 6 counties. So next slide, please. So she's put together this template, and this is just the bones of it. I sent it to Jill so she can send it out to you, but really engaging healthcare providers to support caregivers for respite is critical in ensuring that caregivers receive the help and support they need. It has also given us the opportunity to reach more caregivers outside of the aging world. So we partner with the State Office for Aging. So many of the caregivers that we engage are in the aging world, and we struggle to reach all the other organizations in the state. So this is really an outline. I'm not going to read it all to you, but these are the key takeaways that she uses. And in the piece that I sent to Jill, she really outlines all the things that she did. So that will be coming to you. So next slide. There we go. So I met with these folks from the University of California, San Francisco. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to talk with them, but they have a program called Caregivers as Partners in Care Teams. And I apologize for the typo because I saw that this morning. And I gave you the link because they have a website and they have an incredible amount of resources in just in the direction of reaching out to medical community to help them understand the importance of engaging the caregiver in the care process, making sure that they understand how important the caregiver is and what kind of a simpatico relationship it is between caregivers, care receivers, and their medical providers. So that's it for me. We're really excited because we're really finally making some progress up in those counties. And we're so thrilled to have Colleen. She'll be in Alabama. I can introduce you to her then. That's it, Jill.
Thank you so much, Doris. Incredibly exciting work. Next up, we have Alexis Witt from the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending where you're at. My video is 4.5 minutes long, so I only have 30 seconds to do a quick intro here. We are doing some outreach in our state about caregiver awareness. So this is hot off the press. This was just, video was just finished about a week or 2 ago. It took a lot of time to get all the proper releases signed, and it is posted on our website now. So it's a visit about caregiving in our state, and what we plan to do with that is I'm probably going to use some lifespan funds and partner with the North Dakota Broadcasters Association to use it in some marketing efforts. She does specifically talk about lifespan in this video. So excited to hear some feedback of what you guys think on it. Marcia, do you want to go to my video, please?
That's another one of us. You like my wedding dress?
You can hear it. I can't see it yet on the screen. Can anybody else? There we go.
That's another one of us. You like my wedding dress? Brian and I were married for almost 50 years. 2015 is when we thought that things weren't just quite right with Brian.
What really kind of was a big red flag was he got lost twice dropping me off at work. And finally got the diagnosis in 2017 that it was early dementia. By 2019, it had already gotten worse, where he was sundowning. So finally got hold of my friends to get the information about different nursing homes, agencies, anything, because I had had it. But then after I called every single one, I decided, no, that's not what I was going to do. I was going to keep him at home and I would figure out a way to make it work. So I called 2 of the hospices in town. They called me back in April of 22, came out, assessed him, and said he qualifies. So they themselves were a big, big help. The state of North Dakota does, I think, does awesome because I was able to find what I needed to find. Then I had to go a little bit farther because I wanted to know what the Alzheimer's Association had. They came out. We had one meeting with the Alzheimer's person. Sherry came, my social worker came, and we just had a meeting all together about what we thought would work the best. Between them and my children, who were very, very willing to help out, it took an army, but we could do it. We did do it. The girls also, believe it or not, even though they're 5 and 7, they were still able to help do things. Simple things of covering them up at night, helping to put them to bed. We all did it together every night. My family means a lot. Of course, you never see this stuff coming. You just don't know what this Alzheimer's does until it gets bad. Being at home was better for Brian, and it was better for me as well. You really just have to decide if you want to keep him home or not, and whether or not you can handle it and get the help or have the help that you need. You have to pick and choose what you want for you to be able to keep your sanity in this whole mix. And my social worker from hospice, she's actually the one that found the one grant that North Dakota has and told me about. It helps you to be able to get out a little bit because you've got a 24-hour-a-day job taking care of those people. With this grant, I was able to go on a little small vacation the one time. And probably the bigger thing is I was able to make it down to my second great-grandson's birth. That's what I'm really thankful for that. And I just wish more people could see that they could do this if they had the right assistance. You know, some people have help, some people have no help at all. They're doing it on their own. Everybody needs something different for their person. So we have to figure out a way we can make this work for people to do this. That's really the story, but I think the bigger story by keeping him home was he was around his children when they came, his grandchildren, and you don't get that anywhere else but home. And those are the memories you get to keep. That was Grandpa when he was little. He was like Scarlett's age, 5.
And I will be in Alabama if anyone wanted to talk further about that, and look forward to hearing the rest of your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis. That was a very powerful video, and especially thank you for sharing it so hot off the press with us. We feel very honored about that. Next up, we'll go back to the slides. We have Christopher. Again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Is it Pascal?
Pascal, that's fine.
He's a senior communication specialist with Health Centric Advisors, works closely with the Rhode Island Office of Healthy Aging. So welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity. First time doing this. So looking forward to seeing all of the presentations. So basically, Rhode Island's outreach is primarily focused on promoting the availability of respite services through the Care Breaks program and also through the volunteer nursing student initiatives through many of our state colleges and universities. We could probably go to the next slide. So we have a diverse coalition of partners ranging from nonprofit, social, and health-focused organizations to faith-based organizations, and like I mentioned, most of the state colleges and universities. So we developed an awareness campaign, materials, primarily brochures, flyers, and banners for in-person events. And they are targeting family caregivers from underserved communities. And the materials were headlined by a brief visual narrative featuring a person known as Carla, sort of a fictional character, known as Carla by her care recipient, but we define her as caregiver. We can probably go to the next slide as well. And so all of the materials were, again, introduced with this fictional semi-fictional narrative. And then we proceed into more detail about defining who a caregiver is. Again, this is all pursuant to Goal 1. Tips for self-care for the respite provider and additional resources from our partners. The brochure in particular is comprehensive. It has active links and QR codes to obtain additional resources from our partners. And these materials were translated into Spanish and Portuguese, and they were disseminated through fax, primarily for medical offices, email, and in-person drop-offs to primary care practices, pediatricians, geriatricians, healthcare centers, and senior centers throughout Rhode Island. And we also created an online portal page where visitors can view and download multilingual versions of these materials via a QR code that was sent along with either fax or email communications. Also, our higher ed partners and their nursing student initiatives have been identifying physical spaces to provide on-site respite care as well. And we also produced a radio ad for a Spanish language radio station with excellent coverage across Rhode Island and neighboring southeastern Massachusetts. And just as a final anecdote, I was really encouraged by the positive response and eagerness of the radio station manager to help advertise the Care Breaks program. They really were enthused about promoting and spreading the word about this kind of program. So it really demonstrates the value of reaching out to the community members who may be more than willing to help increase awareness above and beyond, what we're doing as partners. And this final slide has actually the QR code if anyone's interested in seeing the materials that were developed. And that's what we've been doing on our side in Rhode Island.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Those are some very valuable tools, and I'm sure the network will be very delighted to take a look at all of those. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure thing.
Next up, we have Kim Vivaldi who is the Lifespan Respite Grant Coordinator with the Virginia Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. All yours,
Hello.
Kim.
Hello, everyone. You can advance the slide, please. Good afternoon. I am Kim Vivaldi with the Division for Aging Services. I work with the Virginia Lifespan Respite Voucher Program. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce my illustrious colleagues, Cameron Faison, who is now the new Virginia Lifespan Respite Grant Coordinator, and Andy Pladia, who is also working with us. They're on the call. They're on this today. So I wanted to give them a shout out because without their support, we couldn't continue to move forward. What we'll be sharing with you today is a short animated video that highlights respite care. The story that highlights is important about respite care. It illustrates a relatable journey through caregiving and discovering the importance of respite. Move to the next slide, please. Much like our previous presenters, we recognize the importance of video and being able to utilize that medium in order to spread the word concerning respite care and people's story concerning respite care. We were so close to having the video available to you, but I did do some screenshots for you. But today what we're addressing is what we call in Virginia a backpack story. And it is going to be housed on No Wrong Door. So when we're addressing our national goals is to increase awareness about a family caregiver and the advanced partnership in engaging the family caregivers. No Wrong Door is our statewide network in Virginia that connects the individuals to services and support through person-centered collaborative approach. Our backpack story, in the context it's housed on the No Wrong Door platform, represents a personal narrative highlighting the individual's journeys through various service systems. So the idea is they carry these experiences in their backpack and the challenges they faced along that way. And these stories that will have multiple ones, but this one is concerning respite, illustrates the real life impact of supportive services and utilization of the No Wrong Door system. Next slide, please. What we have here is what we call Lisa's story. We partnered with the client, Lisa, who wanted to share her experience with her experience with us at the Division for Aging Services and the Virginia Lifespan Respite Voucher Program. She expressed her desire to advocate for respite care and share what a positive experience she had learning about caregiving through the National Respite Care Provider Training. The image to the left is the actual picture of Lisa and her mother. On a side note, I don't often get to meet the clients who are involved in our voucher program. So to see this picture and the joy, as you can see on her face, was really heartfelt to me. Lisa was a dedicated teacher for many years before becoming a full-time caregiver for her mother who has dementia. Lisa quickly realized that balancing the full-time work and the full-time caregiving was unsustainable for her personally. She made the difficult decision to leave her job. Soon after, she sustained the injury, further complicating her ability to care for her mother. During a medical visit, as you can see as the slide over to the up top to the right, her doctor encouraged her to seek assistance for both her and her mother. Lisa reached out to us after connecting with her local area agency on aging. She was provided with referrals to community resources that could support her mother while she recovered. It was then she was introduced to the need for respite care. It was explained to her that respite is a critical service for caregivers' well-being. Lisa then reached out to our team at the Virginia Lifespan Respite Voucher Program. We empowered her to see that utilizing respite care would not only benefit her mother, but also allow her to gain her own strength and well-being. It was at this time she wanted to learn to be a better caregiver. We shared with her the information after we had attended the national conference of the National Respite Care Provider Training. She took the course and reported back about her positive experience, and this will be demonstrated throughout the animation of the video. Next slide, please. And I wish we could have that to show to you, but we don't. So last one. Our vision is, with the release of the animated video and the backpack story on the No Wrong Door website, Lisa's story will emphasize that individuals have the power to make decisions that respect their unique choices, and then to collaborate with others and ensure the continuity of care that enhances their and their family members' quality of life. So what we have here is we like to really highlight, especially through No Wrong Door and the Division for Aging Services, the importance of the person-centered respite care, which we really embrace at our voucher program. We thank you for the time. We appreciate the opportunity to share Lisa's journey. We anticipate that the video will be made available very soon on the Virginia No Wrong Door website. We encourage you to check it out along with some other backpack stories that we have housed there. And I've also provided some links to our voucher program and our Virginia Caregiver Coalition that has supported our journey through this. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much, Kim. Can't wait to see the video.
Very soon.
Next up, the next topic is respite care provider training, and we're going to cover several different aspects of this and related topics. Our first speaker is Lisa Marschke, who is a consultant who works with the Massachusetts Lifespan Respite Coalition. And I believe Lisa does not have slides, so we'll stop sharing and just take a look at Lisa. She shares with us today.
Hello, nice to see everyone. Thanks so much. So yes, I'm pleased to share represent the Massachusetts Department of Developmental Services and the Massachusetts Lifespan Respite Coalition. So just to say, our grant project, we have three main objectives of this current grant. So the first one is advancing the collaboration between Massachusetts state programs that provide respite and the Aging Disability Resource Consortia. Our second goal is around developing and testing an academic credit-based respite program titled Campus to Community at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. And our third is to develop and disseminate an academic respite framework to replicate the Campus to Community program across institutions of higher education. So I'm going to focus on the last two, which are central around the Campus to Community program for my update here today. So in the Campus to Community program, students are placed in pairs to provide weekly respite care to a local family raising a child or adult with an intellectual or developmental disability. This program has grown over the course of the grant, and this semester we have 48 students placed as respite care providers. Before Campus to Community program at UMass became acquainted with the MLRC, they probably averaged about 10 to 12 students. So with the support of the coalition and the funding that goes along with that, they've really seen this program explode. And one of the things that I want to highlight too, just very quickly, is that I know that there's a few other coalition members out there that have a similar program, and the focus is with nursing students. One thing that's really different about Massachusetts is that it's not nursing explicitly. There's this Campus to Community program will take any student that's interested. So I think that sort of is a tiny, small spin, I think, on what we're doing here in Massachusetts. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We also added a drop-in Lego play group on the weekends, which allows us to support a greater number of families and give an opportunity for them to informally connect with one another. We're seeing growth in the number of students interested in the service learning course, but also the number of students who want to stick with their families even after the end of the semester. We have students placed with the same family, maybe 3 or 4 semesters in some cases, which is really nice to see. A lot of families appreciate the continuity. Students complete the National Respite Care Provider training and then meet weekly for additional training and discussions of their experience. We work with an outside evaluator to assess the impact of this course on students' respite care core competencies outlined by ARCH. And across all metrics, we're finding that students are gaining confidence and experience in providing respite care. We've also gotten feedback from caregivers, and overall it seems this program is meeting their respite needs of these caregivers who would otherwise not have access to respite in rural Western Mass. Based on both student and caregiver feedback, we have refined the program, and we're ready to share this model with other colleges and universities, and we look forward to beginning to do that at the ARCH conference in April. So thank you for providing this update. We'll have a lot more to share in about a month's time, so I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you at the conference. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Sure.
I'm really eager as this program replicates across the state.
Yeah.
And just so excited that you have some evaluation data too.
Yeah.
That will help us replicate it even further. So thank you. Our next speaker is Adrian Smith with the New Mexico Caregivers Coalition. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you, Jill. Hi, everybody. I too am looking forward to seeing all of you in Huntsville, or as many as possible. I do believe I have a slide, if you don't mind, Marcia. The New Mexico Caregivers Coalition is a 501c3 organization that started in 2009. We advocate for direct care workers, education, training, higher wages. We thought that we would be an organization devoted only to the paid professional workforce, yet that has not been the case. We serve about as many family caregivers and work with them in advocacy and on legislation as we do with paid professional workers. Next slide. And we were lucky, just like Illinois was, to be one of those 10 states that worked with ARCH and with RCAW a couple of years ago to develop a training, the respite care training portal specific to our state, but based on these national competencies. So this is just a slide that shows you, this is in every presentation that I do for the public, and it talks a little bit about the slide, the training program, and then shows people where to go for the training, respite care training portal. Next slide, please. And then where I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you today, you'll have this slide in the resources, as Jill mentioned, on the ARCH website. I just want to show you this particular slide. This is the key slide for my presentation here. We ask people to go directly to the training portal in this first link. Also on our website, we say, you know, here's how you can find out more about the core competencies on which the training is based. Here's what ARCH does, and here are other resources that ARCH has for you around respite care training. And then here's a key link right here that I would like to show you, our respite care training registry. I think this time last year, when I attended the Bring, Brag, Borrow sessions, we did not have a registry. We were just starting to build that registry up. And if I could, oh, I see, maybe I'm not able to do that. Oh, thank you so much, Marcia. I just want to show you our website and how to find it. nmdcc.org is our website, and under the We Provide, we list the respite care training under our caregiver certification link. And this is the short version of the respite care training portal. And then when I go just below, you see this big sentence right here. Once you complete the respite care training, get listed on the provider registry here. We were learning from those other 10 states in the pilot program a couple years ago that the registry is what really made the difference in driving people, driving the activity, whether it was training for completion, or just helping with the direct care workforce, which is what our concern is. When you get to this really simple website here, that is the registry, and you've got two links. You can either say I'm a respite care provider, and the only people who can have a profile listing on the respite care provider link on this registry are those who've completed our training, the ARCH training. I'm going to just click on this first link over here. I'm searching for a respite care provider. And if I go in here and I search with no other metrics or no other fields, I can see everybody listed here. I think what we're really proud of right now is the geographic diversity of all of the people who have finished the training and are now listed in the registry. It's definitely not enough people. We've got Lions Club as a new partner in Taos, and so we've started to see a lot more people from Taos listed on the registry. And I think that's because of you know, real local involvement. So the key to this presentation in terms of a Bring, Brag, Borrow for all of you, when we see you in Huntsville, the registry builder will be there with me. He's going to present with me, because I think that's the real magic. And I hope that by the time I see you next year, we will have a lot more people listed on this registry. But right now, our respite care training portal is going strong, and we think that this registry, they will help each other. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Adrian. That's really exciting. And I'm excited to know you're bringing your registry developer with you. I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people who don't even know where to start. How do we find someone who can build this for us? So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your presentation in Huntsville. Okay, right now we're going into the Q&A portion of the session. We've set aside some time for you to really engage with those who have presented and your colleagues. If you have any questions, please feel free to come off mute, or if you're not comfortable doing that, put your question in the chat and we will respond. Anyone have any questions or comments, or maybe even similar programs that you've seen your colleagues present on that you're working on in your state that you'd like to let us know about? I see one question from Cheryl asking Celeste, is your task force serving as the state coalition, or is it a separate entity?
Yeah, so our task force is, and I hope I'm going to be answering the question correctly. Our task force is part of one of our deliverables of our lifespan respite program. So it is from our lifespan grant that we're able to coordinate the task force and have invite the members that we did so that they represent all different agencies and caregivers in the state of Illinois.
Celeste, this is Cheryl. Can I follow up with that? Do you have a state coalition, and are they engaged in the task force?
We have also a family caregiver coalition that is a member also of our task force. Yeah, and then I hope that answers your question.
Well, she represents the Illinois Respite Coalition, so yes. There is a state coalition that partners with the state agency for the grant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's another question in the chat, Jill.
Sorry, I missed that. Susan, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask it?
Sure. I was so impressed with that outreach efforts this morning. The video and the brochures. I was really excited about New York reaching the medical community. I think about that in my own life. But every time I hear these presentations, I'm like, how do you know that you're reaching who you want to reach? Do you have a way to gauge that so that you can, adapt what you're doing or tweak it in some way? Maybe you don't know. Say, if you don't know, say, I don't know, and I wish I did.
Well, Susan, I know we're reaching the medical community because we're knocking on their doors, literally knocking on the doors. She's like great at cold calling. So she's not even trying to email and get an appointment and yada, yada. She goes in and she talks to the front office manager, who then connects her to the social workers, she's connected us with some big networks up there. It's really quite amazing what that face-to-face cold call can do.
Yeah.
And I
Thanks,
think,
Doris.
Doris, you're tracking that right with when you do get calls as far as where the referral came from. So I think to your point, Susan, right, of being able to kind of see like, is that outreach effort paying off, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
No, we don't track anything, Dina. I just,
Yes, you do, my friend.
Is anyone else doing that kind of tracking? When you get a request for information, do you ask, where did you hear about us?
I'm with the Virginia Lifespan Respite Voucher Program. I know on all of our applications, we do have a question of how they heard about us. Most of our applications come from word of mouth. So family member just talking to other family members. But we have gotten a lot of people who hear about us from their areas on aging. So they're AAAs.
I think we had another question in the chat from Denise in Rhode Island. She wants to know regarding the UMass respite program. They do in Rhode Island have a similar workforce clinical training for nursing students, but it has experienced some limitations with liability issues, as some colleges are not allowed to let students into homes for at-home respite. And she wants to know if you've experienced similar issues, and also, how is the respite training provided?
Sure. So to answer the first question around liability, I know that all of the families are interviewed. There are home visits that are conducted. And also I'll say that it is in-home respite, but we don't, the family does not leave. So they might maybe retreat to, the backyard to do gardening, go up to their bedroom and have a nap or make a phone call. But people stay home so that if an emergency occurs, people can be called upon immediately. And so I think that's sort of how we work around that. And I would say too, and this is where I know I can try to find out from Dr. Woodman and get back to you, but I would be willing to say too that for the most part, the families that are involved are not sort of in the medically complex category. So that's sort of another, and I'm not quite sure. I think Dr. Woodman makes sure to say that, these might be students who are studying psychology, social work, psychiatry, or a variety of different backgrounds and don't have a medical history. So I think that sort of helps the family decide whether or not it's a good match for them, right? Similarly, the training, I want to say that the students are sort of given a window of time to complete the training online. So I think that's the short answer for that. Does that do it?
It does, thank you. And just as a
Great.
follow-up, when you say the training, you mean the ARCH respite training?
Yeah.
Mhm. Got it. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Hi, Jill. I think I can help a little bit with that question. My name is Jan. I'm part of the team that oversees the Nursing Student Collaborative Program in Rhode Island. The legal problem that the schools are having are not at home because our program, like Lee says, the family stays. It's a companionship-based program. The legal problem has been coming with the schools. The legal team had been advising the teachers that the students can't be home or can't go alone. They have to be overseen by a teacher, and they don't have enough teachers to go with every student and do those visits.
Now, this has to do, I believe, with some nursing requirements that are happening in most states right now, nursing supervision requirements.
Right.
That are impacting some of these programs. We've heard about that from some of our other similar programs that use nursing students. That has to be on-site supervision.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Jill, this is Cheryl. Can I follow up with that? Because I wanted to hear more about more than just nursing students. Somebody was saying that they had students, any student interested. Wasn't that you, Lisa? That you could have any student interested. So are they being recruited rather than through a program where maybe they need clinical hours? You're really recruiting them to participate in this program outside of maybe a clinical or a supervised situation. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Right. So for example, there might be some students who are interested in pursuing, you know, special education teaching, for example, and so there, a lot of it, believe it or not, is word of mouth. Like students are having positive experiences, and so they're telling their friends about it. And there's also, you can take the course and get 2 credits, but you can also take it as an internship opportunity also. And it's not a course, the way that Dr. Woodman designed it, it's, you know, really for any student who is interested to learn and enhance their, you know, their education by understanding a little more about how families operate with a child with disabilities and sort of what, you know, what special things need to occur in those families and whether or not they want to pursue a professional field. So, yeah, so it's open to a lot of students. And like I said, the families that tend to participate don't have children who are medically complex. So these are students that might go in pairs, like I said, in pairs, to the family's home and just play Legos with the student for a little while, or do whatever it is that the young person would like to do for that time, just to be able to give that family a break.
Right, Kate has been patiently waiting with a raised
Kate.
hand, so go ahead, Kate.
My question, excuse me, my voice is not cooperating with me today. My question is around the emergency respite care. I believe it was Illinois. My friends over Illinois helped me out a little bit of with the you know, elaboration. Is there eligibility criteria that you guys look at, and is there a cap amount that you have in terms of budget constraint, and how long the caregiver, in terms of timeline, how long the caregiver is allowed to have it and how many times they can apply? Sorry, that was so many questions.
No, absolutely. I am happy to help answer. So with our emergency respite care program, I'll start with the eligibility. So any family caregiver who resides anywhere in Illinois who has a loved one of any form of diagnosis of, you know, disability or special need, they qualify for emergency respite as long as they aren't already connected to a waiver service. So as long as they haven't been connected and they, you know, their loved one has a diagnosed disability or special need, they would qualify for emergency respite vouchers. Our emergency respite voucher is a funding that can go up to $500 depending on, you know, the needs of the family. And it does serve as a one-time program. So what we do first and what we make sure families know and understand when we complete like an intake to begin the process is that they are offered emergency respite as a short-term one-time support. And then we also connect them, you know, refer them to their other resources that can provide them with sustained respite support so that ideally their respite won't end with the emergency voucher. You know, maybe they qualify for our voucher program, or there's in-home programs, and all of that. So we'll connect them. Or if it's aging services, you know, we let them know where to go to connect with aging. You know, so that's part of that emergency respite conversation as well, so that, you know, respite can ideally continue for them.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jill, there's a number of them piling up in the chat.
I thought I've been following those. Some of them have been answered in the chat. Does anybody want to unmute yourselves if your question was not asked and answered? Please feel free to unmute yourself. It looks like Cheryl had another question in the chat. She's interested in the decision making around doing a video or running a radio ad, and what determined taking that approach?
I can answer just briefly on our methodology for the radio ad. I did some initial research into which outreach methods produced the highest success rate for certain demographics. And I personally was surprised to learn that radio was still topping the charts, so to speak, in terms of having the greatest success in our area. I never really would have imagined that, but sure enough, that's what it turned out to be. And I did some referencing to make sure that my research, was fairly sound. So that was the impetus for the radio ad in our case. And again, they do have great coverage in terms of the demographic. And like I said in the presentation, they really do seem enthused about supporting the program.
Yeah, that's very interesting. With so many other competing methods of getting information out, I think I would be surprised. I'm surprised to hear radio is still a way to do that. A number of you mentioned your focus on reaching caregivers in rural areas, and we know this remains a major barrier for many of you. And some of you are being quite successful at that. I have a question for Adrian, especially when you mentioned your recent success in engaging people in Taos and New Mexico and how successful that's been. What new strategies did you use to particularly engage that community more so than others in your state? I'm assuming Taos is pretty rural or frontier or whatever it's called there.
It is very rural. It was an organization that reached out to us, actually, the Lions Club, and they said, it looks like you have something that we want, rather than us starting this conversation with the state agency officials. Maybe you could help connect us directly to this training portal and, help us understand what happens after that. So, just like with brand new projects, sometimes you spend a lot of time on the front end, or you think, it's days and days, or it can be all day meetings and things like that. The payoff has been enormous. We've gotten more out of this because of the local interest that existed before we, they reached out to us, like I said. The other thing, though, Jill, that happened last year was hiring a lead organizer in a rural area on the Navajo Nation. She already knows, people. She's already related to so many people there. Those two things have made a huge difference.
How did the Lions Club hear about you? Was it through that particular connection? I mean, the Lions Club reached out to you. How did they learn about you?
Oh, because the lead man in that of this particular group used to be on a governor's advisory board for aging. And so he's like 90 something years old. He's one of the oldest people in the organization, and he's still he's a phone person. He's he's a meet face-to-face person. He called me every day until I realized that this guy wants to be our best friend. And so we just let it happen, and he's gotten these things started. I would never have thought to reach out to the Lions Club, but then it made me realize, well, there's Rotary, Kiwanis, all of these, local groups and international groups that I would never have thought of.
Yeah, I just think that's a fantastic story and connection that you've made. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any particular successful strategies they've used in rural communities? I know, Doris, you've also done your whole senior companion program is focused on rural areas, is it not?
It is. Challenges around that though. But you know what I learned about especially the CWRC one is these, at least this particular area of the state, they don't trust outsiders. And so if you want to have any impact, you have to have someone who really has lived there and can name names and make connections. And that's where Colleen has been successful. I hired her out of Florida and she just wanted to come home, and that's where she lives. So I just got lucky.
Yeah, that's another amazing connection. Again, someone with pharmaceutical experience that brings something new to the
To the
outreach
table,
and
yeah.
engagement field.
Yeah. I never would have made that connection because I always thought a pharmaceutical rep would be more interested in making a lot of money. And she was just interested in coming home to rural New York. So
you got the benefit of her tremendous skills.
yeah,
That's really
huge.
cool. Anyone else? Let's see. Kate has said, has anyone explored partnerships with pharmacies to raise awareness about caregiver and respite services?
Great connection though, great idea.
Many, many years ago, the first lifespan respite program in the country, the Oregon Lifespan Respite Care Program, did most of their outreach on the backs of the little bags in which you bring home your pharmaceuticals, because they knew so many people were taking medicine. And so they advertised on the pharmaceutical bags, and it was very successful at the time. The program no longer exists in Oregon, but that was a very successful outreach strategy.
Jill, this is Cheryl. I think if Corey's on the line, didn't they do something with the Meals on Wheels, similar kind of outreach, trying to find places to put information that would otherwise, you know, it would be difficult to target exactly, but if they've got a program they can piggyback on that was already going to be going out to a particular population, that they could put a flyer in the materials that were sent out. So I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, many states have also started working very closely with their community health center workers, community health workers in the state, again, who visit people with disabilities, older adults, and home visiting around medical care, can also perhaps share some information from your coalition or grant program about respite services. And Arch has published quite a few studies on using community health workers, and I'd be happy to share some of those resources with you, if you're all interested. Talina says in Oklahoma, they have a flyer specific for pharmacies. And when you say you have an email list of pharmacies, is that what you mean, Talina?
Yes, that's correct. We have a listserv that whenever we get updated information, such as our MEPA or programs, like some of our community mini grants we'll be talking about tomorrow, we send that information out to them in the form of almost like a newsletter.
And do they in turn share, how do they share that with their clients?
So some will put it in the bag, some will leave it out on the counter, and that one-on-one interaction going into those smaller communities and really explaining what we're doing, because trying to sell a free service is really hard. We just have that conversation, but we make it a point to go into the pharmacy and have that one-on-one, because what we found is that that is the point of contact for the majority of the people in that town that we have access to.
Fantastic. We're getting a request for you to share that flyer if you can.
Okay, I can, when I get back to my computer, I'll pull it up and send it over to you, Jill.
Thanks, that's great. We'll post it on the Arch website with the other materials from today.
All right, sounds good.
Any other questions? Comments?
Hi, Jill. It's Lisa Schneider.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I'm really excited to hear everybody talking about outreach efforts and finding some great successes in some of the tools that you're deploying out there. This is going to be a big part of one of the National Respite Provider Training grants that we have to help other states implement the training. But we're looking at ways to outreach, and I'm really interested in trying to collect some of this stuff. And I know, Cheryl, you had mentioned something earlier in the question thing that was going on. I'd love to know, like, maybe one or two of your most successful outreach efforts and what the results were. Like, how did you measure or capture, that this was our highest, resulting impact technique or style, or in what period of time did you do it in? Just would love to capture how, that this is something that some people seem to have great success in, that we could capture and then share with everybody.
Yeah, we did have some responses in the chat about how people are collecting data on, Susan had asked a question earlier, how do you know the outreach you're doing is effective? And so some people did share how they collect that information. We also have lots of outreach. In addition to all the wonderful new things that were presented today, we have lots of outreach materials on the Arch website too that have been used by Lifespan Respite grantees over the years. But does anyone else have any other spectacular outreach initiatives you've undertaken that have demonstrated success?
We've been using public radio. We were using just a regular radio station, but because we're looking for older adults to volunteer, we've had some real good success with NPR.
And they were open to doing that for you. That's wonderful.
We're paying them, Jill.
Well, and I know that a lot of our, when we asked the survey question, how did you find out about the training? A lot of it has been word of mouth from family and friends, but they've heard it from somewhere, and we just can't seem to capture that point of touch that's happened. But again, a lot of it is family and friends, so it's really hard to know what that source of awareness came from.
Yeah, good point.
We are in a faith-based building organization. So every once in a while, we stop in churches and make presentations about our program. We are also part of the flyer and radio information that Christopher from Health Centric mentioned. But I think with the question that we have in our application, like, where did you hear about us? Our most response would probably have to be doctor's office with that max fax that they did last year or the year before. Doctor's office, and we have a good connection with our CAP agencies in the state of Rhode Island.
Also, with the new provider reimbursement that's happening through Medicare for older adults, being able to reimburse physicians and other healthcare providers, like occupational therapists or physical therapists, for providing training to family caregivers related to the patient's care plan, provides some incredible opportunities for us to share information with those providers so they can share what you all have while they're getting reimbursed to do the training with family caregivers. So it's a really great time to be connecting with the health community, because I think they're more open now, especially for the older population, to sharing that information because of these new Medicare reimbursement payment strategies. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, well, amazingly, we're ahead of schedule, but let's go ahead and take our 15-minute break. If you want to just bring, oh, there you go, you're ahead of me, Marcia. We will take a break, come back in about 15 minutes, let's say 20 minutes to 3 Eastern time. But while you're gone, we're going to keep asking you this question because we're hoping at the in-person meeting to organize roundtable discussions around common and shared goals. So if you can identify one of the goals that you have for your Lifespan Respite Grant or coalition activities in the chat, that would be great. We're also going to have an opportunity in the breakout discussion to share those if you'd rather do it in person. But please go ahead, take your break, get a little bit of respite while you're out. And we'll see you back here at 20 minutes to 3 Eastern time. Thank you all so much. Back. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice little break. I want to take a minute again just to thank all of you who presented for doing just a really outstanding job. Not only in your presentation, but in all the great work that you do every day through your Lifespan Respite Grant and in partnership with all of your great partners in your coalitions. And also thank you for the great discussion we had afterwards. I thought it was incredibly interesting and very productive, and we learned so much more than we had even learned from just our presenters. So thank you for engaging in that discussion. The topic for the breakout discussions that we're going to go into now is meeting the future head on. We are not going to record this session. We hope that you will use the time to speak very freely about what your goals are for building or enhancing a coordinated system of respite care services in your state, how you've identified and addressed the gaps in your respite systems, and really just about anything else you want to share about the work that you're doing. As I said earlier, we're hoping to organize roundtable discussions at the in-person meeting in Huntsville in April around the goals that you identified today. So thank you for that. We're going to extend it because we're running a little bit early. I'd hope that you'll stay with us, but we'd like to extend the discussion 5 more minutes. We'll meet until about 3:30 Eastern time. And then come back and share a couple of major points that might have been made during your discussions. You'll be randomly assigned to one of 3 breakout rooms with a facilitator. It'll either be Cheryl Donnell, Susan Summers, or me as a facilitator in your group. You'll all be responding to the same questions that I sent around to you via email, and that also you can find at the link on this slide. And Marcia will put that in the chat as well. In the last 5 minutes, it might be helpful to help your facilitator identify 1 or 2 major points that she will bring back to the larger group. So again, thank you for being here today. Thank you for staying for the discussion groups because I know they're going to be very rich and very helpful. And I'll let Marcia go ahead and move us into our groups. If you get trouble and you can't connect to a group, Marcia will help you do that. So don't panic. Welcome back. I think people are all back with us at this point, I hope. I hope you had as great a discussion as we had in our group. And of course, poor Kate got cut off mid-sentence because she was sharing some wonderful resources for us. So we'll have to get that from you again, Kate, because we missed some of what you said there. Why don't we have a little bit of time left. It would be nice to hear 2 or 3 major points that came out of each of those breakout groups. I hope it was useful for you. Why don't we start with Cheryl Donnell and her group?
All right. Yeah, we had a very good discussion in our group, and I really appreciate everyone's comments and talking about some of the gaps that that we're working on. The registry came up, having a registry for and workforce development with that to have that piece in place, and thinking about the people who say, why didn't I know about you? Some of the awareness about that. So there are some legal hurdles with the registries that that have made it challenging, but such an important thing. So trying to address some of those legal issues and maybe using community partners, somebody that's maybe separate from the state, or that has tried to work with the state to do that. Another area that we discussed a little bit was obviously working with people in rural areas, and so marketing and having an awareness campaign to reach them, to be able to dedicate staff to a marketing role and be able to help them recruit the providers. And that turns out to be a big effort. It's not just making sure families are receiving voucher funding or something. Sometimes it is a real effort to kind of find those providers in the community. And there's such a rate differential. Some areas they can pay, the $55 an hour rates, and others are kind of constrained to like a $26, $28 rate that makes it difficult, even if the family provides a copay, to be able to find a provider on a list that will accept them. And so that sometimes union restrictions tie your hands a little bit on that. So that finding providers is going to be a big issue. Advertising and having money dedicated to some marketing and outreach activities, and having that. Sometimes we're having to use some funds that are less restricted because the state funding or the partners that we have don't have maybe some funds that can be applied to that. So that part of that development of a marketing plan. And if we heard some great resources about using Facebook to target specific audiences, and that was a little bit maybe less cost prohibitive. Some of the other gaps is, just getting families connected with providers. We've got states that have a database maybe almost complete, or registry, and they know that's part of the solution, but some of the gaps are seniors that have assets and then they don't qualify. And so programs are using emergency respite to connect families with a provider, and using the emergency funding to get them in the door one time, hopefully to be able to connect them long term. But often because they can use those funds to hire family and friends, they don't get that longer term sustainable support, and they just can't find it. And so they will offer those families an opportunity to use those respite funding year after year, and use a very vague or broader definition of respite that includes things like stress of caring for a loved one, as long as they don't have other state funding or whatever programs they can that they could use that respite funding. Some of the major goals, we talked a lot about connecting with agencies and generally getting reps to come and talk to caregivers, to gather them together in meetings to discuss how to identify gaps. So when the agency comes to tell others about their services and what they're doing, then one of the questions is, after the families get to ask questions, is where here's what we offer, but where do you see the gaps coming from us? Where what are some of the gaps that we need to fill? And so doing that has been a very productive way of reaching out. We heard some interest in that. state plans, being able to put together some long-term state plans to pull people together and identify those gaps, and then actually have a series of recommendations that people will be responsible for following and taking on. And so we've got surveys and other tools that people are going to be wanting to develop, disseminate, and get some responses from. And we saw one example of how a state was able to use like Facebook and get some really nice response to a conference that they were hosting in their state to get people to participate in that through greater marketing. But just those goals and having people who are dedicated to doing that and getting those surveys out, and with the surveys, talking about those, make sure that they're evidence-based practices that are being employed. And so even though some have used surveys and the results have been really eye-opening, but the main thing is that people say, I didn't know about respite. That's the constant challenge that we have of identifying those caregivers. And so that's the thing, updating those state caregiver plans, the identification of caregivers, helping them self-identify, serving them, and then and linking them to a provider. And so that idea of maybe highlighting those agencies and getting them connected. We ended kind of in a conversation about the challenges of the future and about how our population is aging, and more are going to be looking at caregiving, nursing homes, and we just don't have workers, and we don't have a mechanism for getting people to seek jobs in this arena, or we have disincentives that are preventing them from taking those jobs because everyone's looking maybe for a better opportunity, but who's going to do those jobs in our future? And so that's a quick summary of our group. I hope I didn't miss anything that was a major point. Did I do okay?
Right. Does anybody from that group have anything they want to add? Briefly? If anything was missed, I don't think you missed anything. though,
You did
Cheryl.
great, Cheryl. Thank you. You did great.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
is absolutely
Totally.
nothing.
Much better than my memory.
Susan, do you want to share the highlights from your group?
Yes, I'd love to. I regret that we didn't record it because it was really, really good. Okay, so in terms of gaps, I think there were like 7. Transportation, emergency respite, access, caregiver to caregiver support came out as more than one state said that was a need in their state. Children with special health care needs in a state that tended to historically focus more on aging, or sometimes when the grantee lies in a specific agency, just the notion that you need to make a special effort to reach populations not represented by that agency. The importance of the siloing of information across departments continued to be like a gap or an issue for states. And then underserved populations, including rural populations. So all those were identified as gaps, but when we discussed, I inserted this question about what the gaps in the states are, but also how they knew about what those gaps in the state were. And that brought up a number of issues and interesting conversations, similar to what Cheryl was sharing. So one of the things that came out is who you ask and how you ask when you do needs assessments and surveys will yield different information. So most of the people who talked, who shared in the group, talked about conducting formal needs assessments. And and they're doing these annually, they're doing them, regularly, periodically. One of the states, based on their needs assessment, formed task forces to deal with the issues that were identified and the gaps that were identified. And they are now reviewing the way they collected the data and what the surveys asked. And because they didn't get all the information that they needed, or they have questions. So there was this description of this wonderful feedback loop of surveying, seeing what was useful to them, seeing what was missing, revising the survey and doing again. And then we had some kind of peer-to-peer support about how to do this. And this was such an issue across participants in the group. It made me think that Arch might want to gather people just to talk about how you do this, and what's included in your survey, and who does it go to? How do you reach different populations? One of the ways, another way that people know what's going on is, like, again, through those task forces and communication. One state, in addition to doing the formal needs assessment, does regional forums with a facilitator with expertise in brainstorming. And they particularly are asking an identification of needs that could be addressed by the coalition. So they're not just asking this like blanket, question that's out in the ether. In the way that they're constructing, gathering information, they're already thinking about how to use that information to respond, like similar to the task force, like here's who's going to take that information. They go in with this, with the notion of who's going to use this information, how they'll use it, and how they'll respond to it. And I thought that was just a really brilliant planning in terms of needs assessment. Another thing that came up, we're actually talking about the goals for next year, and one state is reaching underserved and rural. And we just talked about how they're doing outreach by sending live bodies out to communities and starting, to listen and to converse. And we talked about, like, as an informal way of assessing what needs are, that, paper and pencil or computer survey is one thing, but having those conversations with people to assess needs is really good, like supplemental qualitative information. Let's see, what am I missing? One state described how the communication at the agency level, and this has kind of grown over time and intentionally, the communication across agencies is very strong in the state. And they do cooperative planning. So you see the needs not just from one perspective, but from multiple perspectives. And then they have coalition partners, and they have had community grants, and they're all connected in a way that allows you to consider like mandates, but also regional needs and program needs. So and they meet and they discuss, so the needs are not abstract, they're immediately identified, and there's a conversation about how to fill those gaps through, ongoing. And I know a number of states do this, but I think that's a brilliant model to think about. Again, like who you're asking and how you're asking is going to get you different information. And so in research and evaluation, you talk about triangulation, and there are some states in the group who are actually doing that really intentionally, which I thought was really brilliant, and it gives you a different idea about what's going on. Have I missed anything in the group about what you're doing? It was a really esoteric question, conversation about evaluation and needs assessment. That was really wonderful. Hop in if you have anything else to say.
You did a nice job, Susan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I think you really captured what we discussed, and, understanding some of those barriers for getting the needs assessments and making sure we're being accessible and in our outreach into populations that may not necessarily be reached out otherwise. So I think it was a great conversation. Thank you.
Sounds like a wonderful conversation. Thank you all so much. I want to apologize in advance. I'm not as good a note taker as Susan or Cheryl. So I'm going to count on you all in my group to supplement. When we started talking about gaps, the first gap that was laid out there was the issue that even when families have the resources to pay for respite care, they cannot find the respite providers. And we went on then, especially in rural areas, and that of course led to talking more about other gaps of populations that are not served. In one state that's still not able to really serve all ages, there's a tremendous gap remaining in serving the other than the older population. So that's still a gap for some states. Another state is experiencing a difficulty specifically in serving children with behavioral needs. That remained a big gap. And of course that led to, well, how are we reaching, how are we engaging with these groups that we've identified where the gaps are? And we also, several people talked about the fact that now they've learned that in-person, Susan alluded to this, in-person education with caregivers specifically is becoming much more effective than virtual online training, especially for older adults who don't participate readily in virtual training opportunities, that they're much more receptive and open to and participate more in in-person training. So several states are beginning to do more of that. That kind of goes against a lot of what we, I think, believe, in that caregivers don't have time, and online training is going to be much more effective for that population. But I think we've come to believe that maybe that's not necessarily true. They do want to engage with you in person. So expanding that lifespan eligibility to serve gap populations, we talked about that as a way to begin to address some of these barriers, that lifespan was designed to be that gap filling component of a coordinated statewide system. One way to do that is to develop tools that are easier for intake counselors, for options counselors, for anybody who's working with families, more easily usable one-page tools that directly identify what state programs might exist to help those family caregivers pay for and access respite services. And some states identify the tools that they have and will be sharing them with us. Another way that, again, we also talked about how do you gather the information that identifies where the gaps are. And one state talked about hosting caregiver forums around the state. And then they're going to be, from those forums, identifying where the gaps are and identifying advocacy strategies to help to meet where those gaps are. So I thought that was a very wonderful approach. And working around on the policy and advocacy end of meeting those gaps. We then got into a very involved discussion about, again, not serving those populations that are traditionally underserved. And that might be, again, the age groups, it might be other tribal populations. And wanting to know, and that helped lead us into our identification of what goals we might have that we can discuss at the in-person meeting in April. And one very adamant goal would be to talk more about what are the successful engagement strategies that states are using. Specifically, what tools are you using to engage these populations? How do you participate or identify trusted members of those populations that you can engage with? We learned a lot about one state that uses local community events that are geared towards specific populations, cultural groups, and that those become very important avenues to being able to engage and reach those populations. But I think one of the goals in the table discussions that we will have is to talk about successful engagement strategies. How do you know it's successful? What kind of data are you collecting to demonstrate that it's successful? And what tools, specific tools, are you using to do that? I think we talked a little bit about also a gap being, and this would also come under engagement strategies. The conversation we've been having for decades about family caregivers who don't identify as family caregivers, and how do we expand on that so that we improve the ability of caregivers to identify as caregivers so that they know there are services available for them. And that's an ongoing and continuous conversation that all of us have frequently. And we were just starting to learn about some of those strategies when we got pulled back into the main room. So hopefully we'll continue these discussions when we meet in person in Alabama. Does anybody from my group? I know I missed a lot, so if you want to supplement anything I just said, please feel free to do that. It was a really great discussion with lots of good strategies discussed, especially around engagement with underserved groups and rural communities.
Jill, you want to mention about the language suggestion that you brought it up at the meeting?
Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Arch is working very hard under the direction of Tawara Good from the National Center for Cultural Competence to try to change some of the language we use, especially around engagement strategies. And we're trying not to use the word outreach, because that implies a more paternalistic approach to bringing new populations in. Engagement is more of a two-way street. Outreach implies a one-way activity from us to them. So when possible, we're trying at all times to use the word engagement rather than outreach. Now, I know this is, we're all so used to using words like underserved and outreach, it's very difficult. And also when we respond to federal opportunity and funding opportunity announcements, they ask you to talk about outreach. So we don't have much of a choice. We have to use the language that we're given. But I just threw that out there as a new way to even think about how you're reaching rural populations, cultural groups, LGBTQ populations, whatever it is, different age groups. Let's try to think about it more as an engagement strategy rather than an outreach strategy. And I know there's probably arguments on both sides.
Well, Jill, from a federal perspective, with a lot of our maternal and child health programs, we started using the terms community engagement.
Yeah.
And so that really community kind of is whatever the community is. And engagement, I think, is being more and more accepted all the way around.
Yeah, I like that. And it probably came from Tawara, because I know she did a lot of work with the maternal and child health community.
With her son, yeah, could be.
Before we discovered her.
Could be.
Anyone else have anything else they want to reflect on about today? Questions about the upcoming conference? Well, then I'll let you all go 5 minutes early and claim that back in your afternoon. Thank you again to everyone who presented, to all of you who participated in the discussions, and we're really looking forward to more of this tomorrow. So I hope you'll all be able to come back and join us. And thank you to our facilitators, Susan and Cheryl and Marcia. Thank you for keeping us on track with Zoom. Really appreciate that. Thank you all, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.